There's a book the wealthiest men in history read in silence. It wasn't published in business magazines, never became a self-help bestseller. But it's been there, hidden in plain sight within the Bible, for millennia. Its name is Ecclesiastes. Now, before you think this is another religious motivation video, let me tell you something. Ecclesiastes isn't about blind faith. It's about mechanics. It's about how prosperity actually works beneath the surface, beyond the shallow tips and magic formulas everyone's selling out there. And here's the truth that stings. You can work your entire life, wake up early, do everything right, and still end up in the same place. You know why? Because you haven't cracked the code. And that code is in Ecclesiastes. If you're tired of watching opportunities pass by, feeling like you're doing everything yet nothing changes, seeing less qualified people prosper while you stay stuck, then stay with me until the end. Because what I'm about to show you today is irreversible. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Ecclesiastes was written by Solomon, the richest man who ever lived. And he didn't write this book when he was starting out. He wrote it at his peak, after having everything, after testing everything. And what he discovered changed how the truly wealthy see money to this day. Think about this. The man had gold, silver, lands, women, absolute power, built palaces, financed armies, had everything a human being can possess. And yet, he wrote a book saying most people spend their lives chasing wind, chasing illusion. This isn't pessimism, it's clarity. The kind of clarity that only comes after you've had it all and realized the game is something else entirely. The first thing Ecclesiastes reveals is brutal. Some people work non-stop and die poor. Others work less and prosper quickly. And this isn't injustice, it's not luck. It's code. It's understanding how things truly function. Solomon says this in chapter 9, verse 11. He says, "The race isn't won by the swift. That battle isn't won by the strong. That bread doesn't belong to the wise. And wealth doesn't belong to the intelligent." Then he drops the bomb. Everything depends on time and chance. Time and chance. These two words carry the secret that separates those who prosper from those who just grind. Because look, you can be the fastest, the strongest, the most prepared, but if you don't recognize the right timing, if you don't see the opportunity when it appears, you'll lose, always. And worse, you'll think it's lack of effort. You'll push yourself harder, work more hours, kill yourself trying to force something that isn't in its season. And this is exactly what Ecclesiastes calls vanity. Empty effort that bears no fruit. Now there's a massive difference between effort and right movement. Some people confuse action with results. They work, work, work. But they're out of sync with time, misaligned with the moment. And what happens? Exhaustion, frustration, and the feeling that nothing matters. But those who understand the Ecclesiastes formula know this. The secret isn't working harder, it's working with timing. It's recognizing when the door is open. And this isn't instinct, it's trained perception. Look at what happens in the market. You see companies born at the right time, riding a wave, and in 3 years they explode. And you see others with better products, better teams, bigger investments that disappear. Why? Timing. They entered outside their season. This applies to careers, to business, to investments. There's a time to enter, a time to exit, a time to hold, a time to risk. And whoever doesn't sense this fails, always. There's a story in Ecclesiastes that illustrates this perfectly. It's the story of the poor wise man. He saved an entire city with his wisdom, but nobody remembered him. Nobody. He had capability, had solutions, had everything, But he didn't have positioning, didn't have timing, and he died forgotten. Does this remind you of anyone? How many talented people do you know who never took off? Who have good ideas, who do things well, who are competent, but live in constant struggle. And then you look to the side and see mediocre people prospering. The difference isn't talent, it's code. It's understanding that in the real world, prosperity isn't about deserving. It's about being in the right place, at the right time, with the right mindset. And this is where most people get lost. Because we were taught that success equals effort plus time. Work 10 years, it'll work out. Get a degree, it'll work out. Dedicate yourself, it'll work out. But Ecclesiastes shatters this illusion with one blow. Dedication without perception is productive blindness. You know people like this? Who've worked for years at the same company, work overtime, punctual, dedicated, and remain in the same position? While the colleague who started later already moved up? It's not incompetence. It's lack of perception. It's not seeing the moment to move. Now, take a deep breath with me, because I'm about to show you the second layer of the formula. And this is where things get heavy. Ecclesiastes teaches that under the sun, everything repeats. Cycles are inevitable. And whoever doesn't understand cycles lives constantly caught off guard. Whoever understands positions themselves in advance. Solomon says this in chapter 3. There's a time for everything. Time to plant, time to harvest. Time to build, time to tear down, time to keep, time to throw away. And this isn't poetry, it's strategy. Because some people try to harvest out of season. Some plant in winter and think they have no gift. Some force expansion when it's time to consolidate, and they break. Some save when it's time to invest, and they miss the train. Prosperity isn't linear. It's cyclical. And whoever doesn't respect the cycle gets burned. Let me give you a practical example. You know that person who made money fast, expanded too much, wanted to grow without structure, and in 2 years lost everything? They didn't understand the cycle. They thought it was just constant acceleration. But Ecclesiastes teaches that sustainable growth has rhythm. And there's the opposite too. That person who spends 10 years preparing, taking courses, studying, planning, but never acts. They also didn't understand the cycle. Because there's a time when you have to launch, even when you're not ready. There's a time when opportunity doesn't wait. The Ecclesiastes formula is this: recognize the time and act in the time. Not before, not after. In the time. And this requires something few people have. Strategic patience. Not the dumb patience of waiting and doing nothing. It's the patience of someone who knows they're building something greater, and that each step matters. Solomon built the temple in 7 years, not 7 months, and he was the richest man in the world. Don't you think he knew he could accelerate? Of course he did, but he respected the time, because he understood that greatness doesn't rush. Greatness builds itself. And look at the irony. We live in the age of urgency. Everyone wants results yesterday, wants to get rich in 6 months, wants to build an empire in 1 year. And what happens? Collapse, burnout, frustration. Because you're trying to force a season that isn't yours. There's a phrase in Ecclesiastes that says, "Whoever watches the wind will never sow, and whoever looks at the clouds will never reap." Translation: whoever waits for perfect conditions never acts, and whoever never acts never harvests. But there's the other side too. Some people act non-stop, without thinking, without evaluating, and that's also foolishness. Because action without strategy is desperation disguised as productivity. The wise person isn't the one who always acts, and isn't the one who never acts. The wise person is the one who acts at the right time. And how do you know what the right time is? Simple. You stop living on autopilot. You observe. You feel. You listen to what's happening around you. Not just in the market, not just in the economy, but inside you as well. Because there are internal changes that indicate you're ready, and external changes that indicate the moment has arrived. And when the two meet, that's when magic happens. Before I move to the next principle, leave your like on the video. I know you're following along, and this helps the channel grow. And if you've been through this, feeling like you work but nothing changes, comment below. I understand the cycle. I read every comment, truly. Now comes the third layer, and this one hurts the most, because it touches your identity. Ecclesiastes says everything is vanity. And when we read this for the first time, it seems like nihilism, seems discouraging, but it's not. It's liberation. Because look, if everything is vanity, that means nothing you achieve will complete you. Nothing. Not the car, not the house, not the million, not the recognition. Nothing. And this isn't depressing. This is the secret. Because when you understand that nothing external completes you, you stop seeking happiness outside. And then, ironically, you become unstoppable. Because you're no longer dependent on results to feel good. You act because of who you are, not because you need to prove something. And this is where the difference lies between the desperate rich and the prosperous at peace. The desperate rich conquered everything but are still empty. The prosperous at peace need nothing but receive everything. Solomon was the richest man in the world, and he ends Ecclesiastes saying this: in the end, it all comes down to fearing God and keeping His commandments. And when he says, fear God, he's not talking about terror. He's talking about reverence, about understanding there's a greater order you don't control. And this is strategic humility. It's knowing you're not the center, that you're part of something larger, and that when you align with this order, everything flows. Some people fight against the tide their entire lives. Try to control everything, manipulate everything, force everything, and they exhaust themselves, and they break. Because you can't defeat the river. You navigate the river. Ecclesiastes teaches this. You don't control the wind, but you learn to position the sail. You don't create opportunity, but you prepare yourself to recognize it when it comes. You don't force prosperity, but you remove what blocks it. And this changes everything. Because prosperity isn't conquest, it's unblocking. Most people aren't poor because they don't work. They're poor because they're blocked. Blocked by scarcity mindset. Blocked by fear of risk. Blocked by pride in asking for help. Blocked by old patterns they don't even notice anymore. And Ecclesiastes teaches that the wise person isn't who accumulates information. The wise person is who removes the blocks, who sees their own blindness, who accepts they need to unlearn to grow. Look at how counterintuitive this is. We live in a culture that values accumulation. Accumulate degrees, accumulate courses, accumulate contacts, accumulate money. But Ecclesiastes teaches the opposite. Sometimes prospering is about letting go. It's about releasing what no longer serves. It's about emptying to fill again. There's a verse that says, "Cast your bread upon the waters, for you will find it after many days." This is applied faith, not passive faith. Faith in motion. It's you giving without guarantee, investing without seeing immediate return, trusting the process. And this scares people because we want certainty. We want control. We want to know that if we do A, it will result in B. But life doesn't work like that. And Ecclesiastes doesn't sell you illusion. It prepares you for reality. The reality is, you'll plant and won't know if you'll harvest. You'll invest and won't know if it'll return. You'll risk and won't have guarantees. And this is exactly where the test lies. This is where you discover if you truly trust, or if you just say you trust. And here enters one of the most powerful principles in Ecclesiastes that very few truly understand. Wisdom doesn't protect you from everything, doesn't save you from losing, doesn't guarantee victory, but it teaches you to position yourself better next time. Solomon saw this firsthand. He saw wise men die poor, saw fools prosper, saw the righteous suffer and the wicked triumph. And instead of complaining about injustice, he wrote, "All this I saw, and applied my heart to everything." He didn't deny reality. He observed it, studied it, understood the patterns. And this is what made him the wisest. It wasn't blind optimism, it was strategic realism. Because look, there's a type of positivity that's dangerous. The kind that denies pain, ignores problems, pretends everything's fine. And Ecclesiastes doesn't sell you that. Ecclesiastes tells you, yes, life is hard, yes, you'll lose, yes, not everything will work out, and even so, you can prosper. Because prosperity isn't absence of problems, it's capacity to navigate them. And this changes everything in your relationship with money, with work, with opportunity, because you stop expecting life to be fair, and you start playing the game as it is, not as you wish it were. There's another principle in Ecclesiastes that's pure gold. Two are better than one. And this isn't about romantic relationships. It's about strategic partnership. It's about understanding that nobody prospers alone. Nobody. Solomon says this clearly. If one falls, the other lifts them up. But woe to the one who is alone when they fall, for there is no one to help them up. And how many people do you know who are trying to build everything alone? Who don't ask for help because they think it's weakness? Who don't partner because they fear sharing? Who don't delegate because they think only they can do it right? These people stay trapped, always, because there's a limit to what you can do alone. And Ecclesiastes teaches you that strength isn't doing everything alone. Strength is knowing who to walk with. And notice this interesting detail. He doesn't say 100 are better than one. He says 2, because it's not about quantity. It's about quality. It's about having the right people around you. People who lift you when you fall. People who see opportunity when you're blind. People who complete what's missing in you. And this applies to business partnerships, to mentorship, to true friendship. The environment you choose defines the ceiling of your prosperity. If you walk with people who only complain, who only see problems, who only talk about crisis, guess what you'll attract? But if you surround yourself with people who act, who solve, who build, you'll be pulled upward, not by magic, by osmosis, by emotional and mental contagion. Now comes one of the most practical parts of Ecclesiastes, directly affecting how you handle money. Solomon says, "Divide your portion to 7 or even to 8, for you do not know what misfortune may occur on the earth." This is diversification. This is not putting all your eggs in one basket. This is understanding the world is uncertain, and security doesn't come from accumulating in one place, but from strategically distributing. Some people make money and hold everything in one account. Some invest everything in one business. Some depend on one income source. And when that source dries up, they collapse. Ecclesiastes teaches you that the wise protect what they've built, not out of fear, but out of prudence. And prudence isn't cowardice, it's intelligence. Look, there's a verse that says, Sow your seed in the morning, and at evening let not your hands be idle. For you do not know which will succeed, whether this or that, or whether both will do equally well. See, this is continuous action. It's not stopping because it worked once. It's continuing to plant, continuing to move, continuing to create, because you don't know which seed will sprout. But if you plant only one, and it doesn't sprout, you're left with nothing. And this applies to everything, to projects, to relationships, to investments. You don't know what will succeed. But if you act on multiple fronts, you increase the odds. And when one succeeds, it covers all the others. Now, breathe with me, because here comes the principle that transforms the most. Ecclesiastes teaches there's a brutal difference between being young and being old. And it's not age, it's perspective. Solomon says, "Better a poor but wise youth than an old but foolish king." Young here isn't about how many years you have. It's about whether you're still willing to learn, whether you're still open to change, whether you still have hunger. Because some 20-year-olds are already old, already know everything, already decided how the world works, already closed their minds, and some 60-year-olds are young, experimenting, willing to fail, alive. And prosperity belongs to the young, not to those with fewer years, but to those with more flexibility. Because the world changes fast. What worked yesterday doesn't work today, and what works today won't work tomorrow. And whoever clings to what they know, to what they've always done, to what worked before, dies on the shore. Ecclesiastes forces you to face this. Nothing lasts forever. No model, no method, no strategy. And this isn't discouraging, it's liberating, because it forces you to always be alert, always present, always learning. And here's the turn. The prosperity Ecclesiastes teaches isn't about reaching a point and stopping. It's about becoming someone who knows how to read the signs, who knows when to enter and when to exit, who knows when to hold and when to release, who knows when to build and when to destroy. It's living prosperity, dynamic, organic. And this requires something most don't have: detachment. Not the spiritual detachment you hear about everywhere, which is just a fancy way of pretending you don't want anything. It's real detachment. It's being willing to let go of what no longer serves, even if it cost you dearly, even if it took work, even if you invested years in it. Solomon built an empire, and in the end, he realized all of it would be left to another, and that this other person could be a fool who would destroy everything. And even so, he built, because he understood the value isn't in the outcome, it's in the process. And this is too profound, because we live obsessed with the destination, with the final result, with the finish line. But Ecclesiastes teaches you there's no finish line. There's the path, and either you learn to enjoy the path, or you'll suffer your entire life. Now, there's one last principle I need to show you, and this is what transforms effort into multiplication. Ecclesiastes speaks about God's time, not in the cheesy religious sense you're used to hearing, but in the practical sense of understanding there's a time you don't control, a greater time, a universal timing, and when you align with this timing, doors open, the right people appear, opportunities arise, and it's not luck, it's alignment. But when you're outside this timing, you can force, you can push, you can fight, and nothing happens. And you kill yourself thinking it's your fault. Some people try to open a door that isn't theirs. Some try to force a relationship that isn't in season. Some try to build a business when it's not the time. And they suffer. And they think it's lack of effort. But it's not. It's lack of perception. Solomon teaches the wise, wait for the right time. But it's not passive waiting. It's active waiting. They're preparing, building foundation, removing blocks, positioning themselves. And when the time comes, they're ready. And the difference between who prospers and who doesn't is this. Who prospers is ready when the time arrives. Who doesn't prosper spends their entire life preparing, but when opportunity knocks, they don't recognize it. Or they recognize it, but are unprepared. So the Ecclesiastes formula comes down to this. Recognize the time, act in the time, and trust the process. Recognizing the time is perception. It's being alert. It's not living on autopilot. Acting in the time is courage. It's not letting fear paralyze you. It's risking when the moment calls for it. And trusting the process is faith. Not the faith that waits for miracles. It's the faith that plants, that works, that moves, and trusts the harvest will come. And look, if you made it this far, it's because something inside you recognized this message. Because Ecclesiastes isn't for everyone. It's for those tired of living on the surface, for those who want to understand how things really work, for those willing to pay the price of clarity. And the price of clarity is discomfort. Because once you see, you can't pretend you didn't. Once you understand the code, you become responsible for applying it. Now, if you want to deepen this kind of transformation for real, I've created a direct method that acts exactly on the invisible locks, keeping you in the same place. If you've been following the channel, you probably know about the 7 mental keys. They're part of the Wealth Recode, and it's different from everything you've seen. It's not theory, not empty motivation. It's real reprogramming. The link is in the description. But regardless of that, I want to give you one last piece of advice. Don't let this video die here, because there's another piece of content on the channel that complements everything I showed you today. It's the video about the 30 principles that govern true prosperity. If you understood Ecclesiastes, you'll understand that video on a much deeper layer. It appears on screen now. Click there and continue this journey with me. And if this video moved you, comment below what impacted you most. I read everything, truly. And share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because the right message, at the right time, can change an entire life. This is The Initiate. See you in the next video.